So, I finally did it. I made it to the endgame of Path of Exile 2. And I'll be honest, as somebody who's never really been an ARPG player, I was genuinely quite chuffed with myself. I'd heard that Path of Exile was this impossibly deep rabbit hole capable of swallowing thousands of hours of your life and destroying your free time, and so naturally, I wanted in. No build guides, YouTube videos, no Reddit or Discord. I wanted to experience Path of Exile 2 the way I imagine a lot of completely new players would. Just play the game, make mistakes, experiment, pick skills that looked fun rather than mathematically optimal, learn whatever the game was trying to teach me. Because if the game teaches me well enough, well, surely that should be enough. And honestly, throughout the campaign, I thought I'd made a good go at it. The combat is brilliant. It constantly asks something of you. Positioning matters, timing, dodge rolling, it all matters. Bosses aren't just difficulty spikes with giant health bars. They're encounters. You learn attack patterns, recognize animations. You improve because you go on to understand them. Every new skill gem felt exciting. Every support gem made me rethink how I wanted to play. And every decent piece of loot felt like I genuinely earned another little power spike. Without ever really intending to, I was slowly assembling a little maniac that actually felt mine. Now, I'd love to tell you that there was some grand tactical vision behind my build, some elegant master plan forged from years of ARPG experience. But no, going into this, my philosophy was, what if Gene Simmons from Kiss had magical lightning powers? That was it. That was the build. If it made electricity happen, I wanted it. Stormwave became my favourite skill. Every opportunity to increase cast speed and spell damage, yes please. Then the Herald of Thunder buff turned up, and suddenly every group of enemies looked like Mother Nature herself had suffered a complete electrical breakdown. Perfect. Exactly what I wanted. Was it optimal? Absolutely no idea. Was it entertaining? Exceptionally. Bosses died after a few attempts. Apart from the Viper, she was an absolute arsehole. Oh, so close. Mechanically brilliant boss, emotionally rage-inducing. But that's exactly what I liked. When I was ended, I knew why. The game had taught me something. I mistimed a dodge, I got greedy, I misunderstood the mechanic. Next attempt, I'd do better. Failure always felt educational because it was fair. That's an incredibly difficult balance for a game to achieve, and I honestly think Grinding Gear Games nailed it. By the time I reached the end of the campaign, I was thinking, I might actually be getting the hang of this. Acts 1, 2, 3, 4, interlude, the whole journey as it stands. And then Path of Exile 2 hands me a Waystone. Now, if you've not reached this point yet, Waystones are essentially the beginning of what Path of Exile players refer to as mapping. This is the end game. You consume a Waystone, enter a map, fight your way through increasingly dangerous monsters, kill the boss, move on to a more challenging map. At least that's the basic idea. Simple enough. Except within 20 minutes or so, I realized something had changed. Not the difficulty, the conversation. Because throughout the campaign, the game was constantly teaching me. Every death had a lesson attached, every new system arrived gradually enough that I never felt too overwhelmed. A pretty smooth onboarding experience. Then I stepped into the endgame, and suddenly, I wasn't entirely sure what lesson the game wanted me to learn anymore. And that, more than the difficulty itself, is what is lingering with me. As I've said, I enjoy games that expect me to fail. Some of my favourite gaming moments have come from finally overcoming something that seemed impossible an hour earlier. Failure is indeed a fantastic teacher, albeit when you know what it's trying to teach you. Maps, however, felt different. Instead of asking, how do I beat this encounter, I found myself asking something much broader. What am I actually supposed to be doing now? Is my build fundamentally flawed? Should I be farming earlier content? Should I refund half my passive tree and start experimenting? Should I re-roll entirely, now that I understand the mechanics a bit better? Or is this simply the points where the game expects me to stop learning from the game itself and start learning from everyone else? Those are very different expectations. One says, keep playing, you'll discover it. The other says, the seasoned community will take it from here. And I genuinely don't know which one Path of Exile 2 intends. The more I thought about it, the more I realised this isn't really a conversation about difficulty at all. It's a conversation about onboarding, because I think there are three very different groups of players arriving at the end of the campaign. The first are the casual players. They've had a fantastic time, seen the story through, defeated the final boss, job done, move on. In fact, I'd argue the campaign is so polished at this point that it stands comfortably on its own as a complete experience. Then you've got the veterans, the players who've lived and breathed Path of Exile for years. They're already fluent in concepts that I'm only just beginning to understand. Crafting systems, passive tree efficiencies, managing maps, utilising specific mechanics. It's a language they've all been speaking for over a decade. For them, maps aren't the beginning of confusion, they're the beginning of the game. And then there's the group I think is the most interesting. Players like me. People who absolutely loved the campaign and don't want to stop there. Not because they're chasing the most efficient build, not because we want to race through pinnacle content, but because the campaign convinced us that there was something extraordinary waiting beyond it. We're invested and looking to stick around. We're exactly the players the campaign successfully converted. The question is, what happens next? That question became even more interesting when I started thinking about how Path of Exile 2 actually makes its money. It's a free-to-play game. Grinding Gear games aren't selling me the campaign. They're hoping I'll become someone who sticks around afterwards. And that's a very different objective. What's fascinating is that many of the game's quality of life purchases don't really become relevant during the campaign at all. I never once thought, I really need more stash tabs. Then I reached maps, and stuff starts to pile up in my stash. Crafting materials, runes, orbs, weapons, armors, tools, gems, waystones. Suddenly, I completely understood why experienced players buy stash tabs, because the endgame naturally creates organizational problems that those purchases solve. From a business model perspective, I can't knock it. The game is free to play after all, and with these options after hundreds of hours of quality-free gameplay. Which brings me back to the question I can't stop thinking about. Who is this endgame designed to retain? Because I'd argue it's not for the casual audience. They've already had an excellent experience, and I don't think it's primarily the PoE veterans either. They're coming along regardless. The people I'm curious about are the players standing in the middle, the newcomers who don't want to leave, the players who have bought into the campaign so completely that they're excited to spend another 100 hours here. Because right now, I genuinely do not know what Path of Exile 2 expects from us. Does it expect us to spend dozens of hours experimenting until something clicks? Does it expect our first character to fail? Does it expect us to re-roll with everything we've learned? Or does it assume that this is the moment we alt tab into YouTube, search for a build guide, join Discord, ask Reddit, let the community teach us what the game no longer does? Because those aren't small differences. They're completely different philosophies for introducing new players to an endgame. And I don't think there's necessarily a wrong answer here. If the intention has always been that the community becomes the teacher once the campaign ends, that's a perfectly valid design choice. But if that's the case, it's worth recognizing that there's a moment, a very specific moment, where players like me stop feeling guided and start feeling, well, a bit at a loss. Not because the enemies are hitting harder or the bosses are unfair, but because the game stops answering one simple question. What should I be learning right now? Again, that may be intentional and part of Path of Exile's identity, or maybe it's one of the biggest hurdles new people have spent thousands of hours already here. I'd genuinely love to hear from people who've already made that journey. Not because I'm looking for someone to fix my build or which passive nodes I should refund or what the mathematically correct skill setup is. I'm asking something much simpler. Think back to the very first time you reached Path of Exile's endgame. What did you do? Did experimentation teach you? Or did somebody else? Because I suspect the answer to that question says far more about Path of Exile 2 than whether my Gene Simmons-inspired lightning enthusiast was ever capable of surviving maps in the first place.